We are going to hear from two farmers now. You know that medicine and farming are very old. One does it in his consulting room, the other in his field. And you'll see what connected cows are all about. And it's Olivier Mariotte with Joël Merceron and Patrick Ramet who will lead this debate. Well, thank you, Guy, for your intentions there. As usual, I've claimed that I have roots in Burgundy, and everybody said, oh, well, he's the local country bumpkin, so he's going to do the panel on farming. In relation to that, I'm actually rather proud of being a country person. And I said that I knew about cows, but actually, when you look at the video, I found that I didn't really know about cows. I know what they're about cows when they're mature and cut up into pieces and cooked, but the rest is something totally surprising. And I invite you to take a look at the video right away because it really is a video that explains what farming's becoming, especially connected farming. Accurate farming is using sensors to capture production parameters and information about their behavior. It's technology that transfers this information to storage silos and methodology to convert this raw information into elaborate information for the farmer and the systems of interface to restore the information and retrieve it through tablets and smartphones and so on. And there are also automatic systems that can be connected up to milk cows, for example. Farming today is structurally getting bigger and bigger. The farms are getting bigger, the size of the cows is getting bigger, which means that we are having problems with the individual follow-up of the animals that we didn't have in the past, and there are more problems with reproduction. So the farmers need more and more tools to be able to monitor the animals on an everyday basis. And there's also an economic context that means that today the production has become globalized with the cost of milk and cereals that are all interconnected, which means that if there's a drought in one country, that is going to make the prices go up, including in France. So the farmers need tools that enable them to manage these economic hazards. And the last thing is that all the legislative aspects, the regulations are such that today we've got to make sure that we protect the environment, respect the animals, and the farmers are also seeking to save a little time in their own life so that they don't have to be on call all the time because it's a difficult job. It's an area that's developing fast. An example is the milking machines, the automatic milking machines. Completely automated. They milk the cows and they integrate a whole series of sensors, for example, to weigh the animal, to measure the quantity of milk produced, or analyze its composition in real time. And that's a system that's growing fast. Accurate animal husbandry is used to steer the animals to detect infections, metabolic disorders, and anything related to reproduction. Electronic ID guarantees that you can track the animals at all stages of production and optimizes the way the farm's data is steered. We were looking for a simple system, and we were immediately attracted to test the electronic identification system in the milking room. Each cow has an electronic tag on the left ear, and when they come in, the number is recognized by the system and displayed in the first position on the screen. Then the second animal comes in, and in the second position, you get the second number, and so on. and we have no things that go wrong as they come into the room. Then we close the doors, and after a year of use, we're sure that we've got a very reliable tool. In addition, there are other applications such as sorting doors, sorting gates, and it can be used for feeding the calves or other things using the same technology with the electronic identification tags. Sensors record considerable quantities of data on the animals and the farms, and the farms are becoming better and better connected with good systems to relate the data, not only on the farm but between farms. And once that is achieved, then you can store the information and use it by converting it and giving it back to the farmer as warnings and information that can be used to steer the farm. So that's what we wanted to show you. I'm sure you're all like me, you've discovered what modern farming is all about. The first question that I'd like to ask you, I won't ask you right away, Joël, but we're going to have to come back to it. How have you managed to get the consumer to understand this? Because people don't necessarily want to see automated cows and so on. What is the challenge that pushed the profession as a whole, like what the pharmacists did with their pharmaceutical record? How did you manage to get the farmers to change their mindset and farm in a totally different way? Well, I'm not quite sure that it was a revolution. It's more a development. Milking machines have existed for years. Obviously, we've put extra sensors on. And in relation to the first question this morning, drug or spy, I'd say that for us, it's really something that's helpful and supporting. All of this accurate farming is something very helpful. So it's a support, it simplifies the job, and it makes our production more effective. That's why we came to it, and it's an evolution. Automated milking machines came along a few years ago, but there are 4,000 of them in France today, so it's necessarily an evolution. You're a milk producer, Patrick, and 1,100,000 litres of milk a year is a lot. How do you get this into your everyday practice in the way you organize your farm? And how did you come to use this type of technology? Well, I don't know if the figures are quite right. I don't know if a million litres means anything to people here. There are 6 farmers who participate in the project. How did we come to this? Well, by need to start with. Not by necessity exactly, but because we needed to improve our knowledge and performance. Our job is a job that's part of an open market now, and it's very competitive, and the duty of any farmer or any head of a farm is to be on the watch for new technologies and knowledge and tools that will enable him to improve his performance, whatever market he's on. That goes for milk, that is to be made into powdered milk for Chinese children, because that's a big developing market, but it's also for producing Danone or any other people on the French commodity market, and it's also for organic farming and appellation products. In each channel, somebody has an interest in seeking better performances, and there's a debate today, of course, on people who are against what is quality on one hand and tradition and history and culture, And then on the other hand, the agri-food business. I don't share the opposition between the two. I belong to the group of people who thinks that you've got to be consistent with the market you're working on, whatever the market. And in this market, we need to look for the best tools to develop and improve the performances you provide. Sure, in relation to that, the penetration of these new technologies or the technological revolution in your profession, is that something that happened easily and naturally? In the health professionals, amongst the health professionals, I think it's not so easy. Well, in the area of health, I appreciated what I heard this morning because we have a lot of common points. During the morning and the afternoon, we talked about the Uberization of our jobs. And I think that we haven't got to that stage yet. We're getting closer to becoming very poor rather than Uberizing. We're in a primary sector of business. We're not yet going to do steaks with 3D printers. Well, these are basics that are very important indeed for us. And as Patrick said, you've got to live with your times and with new technologies that are going to make our job easier. It may help us to solve problems too. If you can diagnose cow disease earlier, you can use less antibiotics. So by that, you'll be contributing to resisting against the phenomenon of resistant strains. So you can see that the phenomena are fairly close. Concerning the genetic aspects of a herd of cows, I think that's very important. You want to keep your genetic capital clean and develop specificities. When you've used all the data that you have available, how can you get the best herds in terms of quality and genetics? Well, that's probably more the technical expert's job to answer that question. I'll give you an answer from the side of the farmer who has needs in this area and who requires tools. What we see, whereas in the previous generation up till the 80s we rose to the challenge of productivity, the key word was producing to feed people. After the war it was food that was important. And in Europe, thanks to these new technologies and genetics, we were able to produce as much as we needed in terms of quantity and quality. But today I think we're facing other expectations from the genetic offer, in particular what has just been said by Joël. We're looking for more rustic animals, stronger animals. It's not producing more in the sense of having the means of producing more, because we know how to do that. We know how to accelerate or slow down. It's the quality of the product that is important, the composition of fat, omega-3 and 6, saturated fats, allergens, and so on, and protein content, of course. For some of these specific features, genetics can be helpful. But above all, and here we'll go on to the future right away, from now onwards, the best and most strong animals are going to be the best. The health of their udders and fertility and so on are going to be important too. To come back to an expression of the previous speaker, biotechnology is something that's come into animal husbandry with genomics, because we can decipher the genome of cows and see how they resist to disease and produce milk. So it really is an evolution that happened about 10 years ago. And this revolution in biotechnology is something that we have to twin with phenotyping. That's to say, measuring the real parameters and connecting up these parameters for all of the animals with analysis of the genome to deduce which lineages of animals are going to be the best to supply the herds of the future. So that's another way of illustrating what we could call new technologies in farming to prepare animals that are going to respond to the expectations of society better, and in particular in the area of health. Because I would like to quote a sentence that I think was said by Hippocrates. He said that food was your first medicine, and I think we've got to supply the healthiest foods possible for our citizens. I'd like to add something here, because in the beliefs or the precautionary principles that have to be implemented in view of these new technologies, people often think that we're going to have a world that will become poorer and poorer and not have any biodiversity. But with the new technologies, and genomics in particular, we're probably going to be able to save races of cows like the abundance cows. With standard tools, we'd never have been able to monitor the development of races like that. We'd be following the big major races such as Holstein cows, and it's research and the knowledge behind it and the transfer of that knowledge that can also provide the answer. And you must never oppose knowledge and research and development and tradition and quality. Well, that enables me to operate a transition to an essential issue for me. You produce milk, and you produce abundance milk of a very high standard. Let me take the example of Benjamin Haguenau, who is Didier Haguenau's son. He was the Pope of Pouilly-Fumé in Burgundy. And Benjamin doesn't just make wine, he never does it without being connected up with the weather forecast and a whole series of other sensors. How can you explain that to the consumer? What is it that's going to get this vision of farming that is almost scary with the 1,000 cow farms and so on, and the high-tech aspects applied to products that really are the flagship products of France? Well, a survey might be a good thing here. A survey on the 1,000 cow farm. Who knows the 1,000 cow farm? And who's for and who's against? Who's afraid of the 1,000 cow farm? Who doesn't care a drat anyway? Okay, so that's very reassuring actually, because it was on that point that I wanted to make my point. You've got the people who are going to buy their vegetables next door on the market, like you, and you look as if you're doing well on it. And I don't mind people knowing that either. It was the health authority that whispered that to him. It was a prompt. And the second type of farming, Patrick will tell us more about, is the farming of quality. In our region, we have Beaufort and Comté, some very nice cheeses. And then there's what we call commodity farming, to go back to the English term, where you've got to produce with the world market to make cartons of UHT milk, and there you're competing with our neighbours in Europe at the least, and with the world at large at the end of the day. So you've got the three types of farming, and I'd say that farming's rather like medicine. all the citizens of the world have an opinion, and very often their opinions are prefabricated by the media. And it's true that in the current crisis, the rather negative opinion that we see on farming is probably what can explain the decrease in the morale of the troops. Well, I don't know what the consumers think about this, but I'm going to try and get you all to understand what I'm getting at now through examples. In relation to what's just been said, whatever the type of market you're working on, the direct markets, the AMAPs, the organic market or the commodity market, I'm quite sure that in the future our excellent farmers will have had to integrate the changes, otherwise they won't be around anymore. They mustn't be farmers as in the past. They'll have to be managers, and they'll have to be open to the world, whatever the world we're in. And to get you to understand how you can equate the two, it's maybe a little bit more complicated than that to get you to understand. But let me give you the example of a product that I know pretty well, because my milk is sent off to make that. That's the Emmental. It's the cheese that is the most produced worldwide. 500,000 tons, probably 200,000 tons in France. It's the most ordinary cheese of all. It's the most widely used. It's used for grated cheese. It's pretty industrial. And in Savoie, we have been able to protect our cheese. Originally, it was from our area or from Switzerland. We've co-signed the paternity of the product over 100 years ago now, but we've also redeveloped a product called Savoie Emmental, based on the tradition and the Appalachian cheeses, but also based on a standard of an excellent standard of taste, and it's produced from raw milk, local strains, and we've put a lot of knowledge and research into it. We've also studied the ecosystems and the microbiology of the product. We have a technical institute at the Roche-sur-Foron, which we cooperate with, and there we protect the product. It's not passive protection. It's something that we work on. We work on selecting the microorganisms to guarantee the qualities and the traditions, and we have technical people that have assessed the technological processes. The milk has changed, the production methods have changed, and in our workshops, what we do with the products has changed as well. And they've adapted all that to the production of a high standard of Emmental, which is sold 3 or 4 times more expensive than a normal banal Emmental. And it's because we had that strategic axis based on quality and performance and the scientific knowledge that we have of the product that we've been able to maintain the ecosystem and our cheese in Savoie. Are the younger generations more inclined to accept these new technologies? Is it something that's taught? Is it taught properly? Because there have been a lot of debates on the health professionals, and I know that there are a few deans around here. But the university seems to be a little bit limp in the face of new technologies. Well, I think it's the same thing here. It's society is changing, and it's society that has brought smartphones to all the farms. Internet is everywhere. Nobody's actually decided to adopt anything, but it's just happened. To go back to the formula in the previous round table, if farming is not going to become a Kodak product, then we're going to have to do it with digital technology. So necessarily, in the practices there's something that is going to follow on the job that we do as farmers. We'll be thinking about raising and caring for animals, and we have an intuitive knowledge of the animals. If we know all the parameters that we have information on today, as you saw in the film, it's going to be that much easier. But today, there's still a real job in farming and with animals. We had a question about biodiversity. The issue was raised earlier, and there was an article in Marianne about fighting against bad food. The debate on industrial farming and organic farming, for example. How do you think these technologies are going to be helpful to you? Because mass production of the products is probably easier if the products are all the same. Well, we're going off the subject really now, but if we didn't have the capacity to accept all these scientific aspects, we would be going towards something very banal. But the fact that we have the capacity to decipher the genome and we've got phenotyping tools enables us to relate the function that we want to keep. And in the case of our market and the diversity of the living world, for just cheese, there are microorganisms in the milk to make cheese. And that enables us to go and look for the right ones. And that's the usefulness of these new tools. Naturally, to simplify and rationalize things, we would probably have made something banal to follow the competition. These tools are going to enable us to work on the specific features, which means, for example, protecting biodiversity. In cheese and milk, today, the capacity to have standardized banal products coexisting for the public in general. I never say that it's bad food. It's eating something that's not expensive, that's standardized. It means that it's probably aseptic, but I never talk about bad eating. And then on the other hand, and above all for us as French people, we are looking for another type of food where pleasure is just as important as the physical and chemical composition of the food and the bacteriological content. And we're prepared to take risks, although I don't really think there is a risk. We can even live with the uncertainty of raw milk for pleasure if necessary, because we know that good eating is eating with pleasure, with a few rules of caution, because I don't think you should eat raw milk camembert if you have a risk factor. But we've got to marry things modern with traditions. And I think that's why it's important for us to go towards the digital world, because we've got to attract youngsters to our job. It's not a job that makes people dream. So anything that can contribute to making the job easier, making it easier to do and improving its image is important for us. Well, I think that's part of the parallels that you can draw with the healthcare professionals, because our job is less attractive than it has been in the past. And I think that the new technologies can be a way of improving our job too. So there's a parallel there. But one thing that really does strike me when I listen to what you say is that you've got penetration of new technologies into your companies and into your job, which is something that's come along naturally because the economic climate and the way your profession is organized dictated that. But if you look at the debate this morning and draw a parallel with what's happening in e-medicine, I don't think you can say that it's something that is full of ideas or very positive. I'd just like to think about this aspect. I think that you've had to use your own money to develop these technologies for your survival, but we're waiting for community money to do it. Well, yes, but no at the end of the day, because in point of fact, to prepare the round table, I read an article in the newspaper Le Monde that appeared at the beginning of the September on 3.0 medicine with Google, and I learned what Google GAFA meant. And the market is $10 billion. We're far from these figures. Google is not really very attracted by farming in general. So it's up to us to do it ourselves and to be smart about it so that we can use Google to forecast the temperature, to record the temperature of an animal, for example. So it's up to us to use it in the smartest way possible, but it's not the economic attractiveness that's going to bring Google to us. We're at the end of the round table. I'd like to thank you because there was a lot of passion in the round table. You defended your job, a job that we probably don't know about properly, and you've probably changed quite a few of the opinions in the audience. Thank you very much indeed.